Hi, my name is Karthika, and today I will be taking you on a journey with me to understand one word, decolonizing. Without any fancy jargons, just the way I learned it from my module. Through decolonization, I have started to understand myself and the world a bit better. For the purpose of this video, I will be discussing a very simple question, not so simple, about how colonialism persists in an invisible form, especially in movies that I grew up watching. And this question has brought me to two films, two cult classic Bollywood movies that every person in India has probably seen, especially women, English Vinglish and Queen. At face value, without the vocabulary of decolonization, both films are about female empowerment, smashing the patriarchy, and figuring themselves out. And yes, on the surface level, it is all that, but once you have a lens and start reading between the lines, you start to see there is something more that the films might not have intended to show you, but it is prevalent, such as the colonial structures, living quietly inside the characters and the stories that they portray. And this drastically shifted the way in which I saw these movies. Now, before starting, what is colonialism? Simply speaking, in India, the official end of colonialism happened in 1947. We achieved independence from British monarchy, but colonialism is not just an event that ends. It is a process embedded itself into the society and the institution that governs the individuals in it. It persists. So now, going back to the movies, what exactly are we trying to do here? We are going to talk about the movies through two beloved characters, Rani and Shashi. They are the quintessential Indian women, aka the homemakers. Their world revolves around their families and taking care of others. As the movie progresses, they both find themselves grappling with their relational identity to others and struggle with the concept of modern women.
मॉडर्न लड़की से शादी क्यों नहीं की?
So, before we talk about the modern woman, let's go back a bit into the history of India as a nation state and how it positioned women as homemakers and created such a structural umbrella for them to base their identity upon. Parth Chatterjee talks about this through his analysis of how, after independence, colonialism was incorporated into the framework of Indian nationalism. So, taking inspiration from the dichotomous way of structuring, it characterized the women and men. Men would work outside and women would be the epicenter of the home, as in the inside world. So, women in this context had to uphold the culture of the nation and not become too westernized. Quijano, in his Coloniality of Power, has stated that colonialism in this way has created a global world power that affects one of the structures, which is family, deeply in this manner. But what is too westernized? The movie continues to show Shashi and Rani as someone who is naive to the extent of being showcased as someone who relies on others, but once they find their footing, the same patriarchal structures in the form of her husband and fiancé reels them back in. So, the idea of a woman finding her identity was to do it under the constraints of what is acceptable for the culture. The new woman, defined in this way, was subjected to a new patriarchy who is obedient, pure, and the flag bearer of culture. This is also interesting to note because it also connects us to Oyevumi, as she mentions that understanding gender as an analytical category requires attention to culture, as people make sense of their world through their own frames of analysis and historical references. So, how does one become modern but not too modern, according to the movies? Let's understand the concept of it through Quijano again. Modernity, in the colonial sense, is not about progress or becoming a better version of yourself. It is a hierarchy. To be modern is to view things through a Western lens and incorporate their way of living as a universal standard. This creates a dualism, which we already discussed through the inside and outside dichotomy, which was incorporated into the nationalism. This thought process is again considered to be superior, and Shashi and Rani are placed firmly on the inferior side of this dichotomous way of thinking. Now, in both movies, to become their modern selves, both women have to leave India. Shashi goes to New York, Rani goes to Paris and Amsterdam, and by the end of the movie, they both have become a better version of themselves, thanks to the new experience they had in these countries, which changed them forever. Their way of finding themselves is also similar. They connect with a group of people who are also new to the country and do not use English as much to converse. There are particular scenes in both movies where the characters are seen talking with such side characters in their own languages without the restriction of a universalized language to convey emotion. This brings me to two topics that I want to talk about. First, the major theme of Shashi's story, which is her struggle to speak English that alienated her at her own home. She ends up joining English classes in New York and by the end of the movie learns the language to feel equal to her husband and daughter, who are always making sure that they make her feel epistemically inferior. It is also a bit funny how such movies that have a cultural influence on the people who watch it propagate the idea of English as a language that should be learned for self-worth, where India is home to more than 15-20 languages. But moving forward, in both movies, the inferiority starts at a personal level from their husband, daughter, and fiancé. Now, let's understand the psyche of these two men through the concept of colonization of mind, to understand where this inherent superiority is stemming from in a way, because it is not entirely just patriarchal but colonial. Satish, Shashi's husband, and Vijay, Rani's fiancé, are the modern men who have been taught to think like a Western man, speak fluent English, and in a way have internalized the thought process of Western superiority to the point of fault that it starts to materialize itself into how they interact with others, especially with their significant others. There is an inherent shame that is propagated amongst Indians who are not well versed in English, or even about the way they are if it is not Western, which can be seen with Shashi and Rani. Satish, her daughter, and Vijay have adopted a lifestyle marked by imitation and mimicry of the Western way of living, whether it is the parent-teacher meeting scene or Vijay coming back from London and breaking up with Rani at the cusp of marriage, because they feel ashamed of their Indianness and find it backward and not good enough. But is English the only way of portraying knowledge? Both Grossfugel and Quijano says that knowledge produced by non-Western perspective is considered inferior, and women are at the lowest level of it and are considered even more inferior for its production. At an ontological level, if we do not separate the basic idea of mind and body, the entire basis of Western supremacy erodes. And if we consider knowledge production as embodied, the mind would be located inside the body and thus conditioned by it. The latter would mean that knowledge is produced from a particular space in the world and thus it is not unsituated. This helped me see Shashi and Rani through a new lens. Their embodied knowledge was the way in which they produced the knowledge of cooking, which is a major theme in both movies throughout. Grossfugel had talked about the witch hunt that happened of the Indo-European women in the 17th century in his paper, where he says that there were no books to transmit their knowledge. It was their bodies, so they were burned alive. As knowledge was transmitted orally through generation to generation. This theme of acknowledging this alternative knowledge production by Rani and Shashi is pushed under the rug as a way of identity formation, but not seen as a way of resisting coloniality at all, which is why I would like to illustrate more about it through the work of Maria Paula Meneses. Food connects the inside and outside world and helps interpreting reality when other forms of communication fails. They both are experts in preparing Indian dishes. Shashi has worked on creating a laddu business for years with precision, which her family, especially her husband, calls a hobby and dismisses despite the financial autonomy it provides. For Rani, it is in the contest she took part in, which showcased her proficiency in cooking by preparing pani puri. These unconventional ways of reclaiming parts of their identity by reinforcing their belief in their ability to produce knowledge is a highlight of the movie for me, which was previously invisible. Maria states that cooking is not just a domestic labor, it is a grammar of knowledge, as recipes are oral archives. It carries their own history and cultural background. Every person has their own lived experiences of food and their own situated struggles associated to it. They are passed from body to body, and the knowledge they contain is both deeply local and at the same time universal, which is experienced through the five senses. In this manner, Shashi and Rani, throughout the movie, apart from proving their proficiency of food knowledge, also prepared food for their friends, classmates, and family members to connect and communicate with them. And through this connection, Maria says we can step beyond colonial representations that deny the contribution of women of the South entirely. In recipes, we can listen to their situated struggles, which cannot be defined sometimes in words. They both reconstruct the archives of knowledge carried in their bodies when no other archive was available to them for expression. It also connects us back to Quijano and Grossfugel. Grossfugel coins the idea that knowledge not originating from the dominant Western structure is inferior, and knowledge produced by women, whether it is embodied, sensory, passed through the kitchen rather than the classroom, sits at the very bottom of that hierarchy. This situated knowledge originates from a place, and in this particular scenario, the site is the body. It lives in the senses. It cannot be extracted from the person, and that inseparability in the logic of Western modernity is precisely why it does not count. But Santos also reminds us that this is not a deficit. It is just a different epistemology. The existence of epistemic diversity provides the potential for struggles of decolonization that are not centered anymore in Western epistemologies and worldviews. A final take that I want to give about the movies before going to my conclusion is that knowledge production is fine, but how do we understand these injustices? Because Shashi and Rani, and even the people around them, do not seem to realize the issue is more broad and structurally intertwined with the global system of power production. And it's not just patriarchy. Taking from Miranda Fricker's concept of epistemical injustice, I would like to give vocabulary to this specific feeling Shashi and Rani felt throughout the movie. Shashi was constantly discredited by her family because she was not knowledgeable or epistemically on par with the listener, in this case, her husband and daughter. So even before she said anything on the dinner table or at any space, she was already devalued and her opinion was discredited. Second, we will talk about hermeneutical injustice, because sometimes people experience something but they cannot name it. It's because the concept needed to name it has never been developed for people in their position. So the tragedy is that English was never the problem for Shashi. The hierarchy that made English feel necessary was the problem. But she cannot see that hierarchy because she has no word for it. So she treats the symptom, learns English, and leaves the cause, which is the structural cause, completely untouched. When we go to Rani, Rani's version is a slightly different way, and it's a bit more heartbreaking. When Vijay calls off the wedding, tells her she's not the right kind of woman for his world because now that he has come back from London, he is a different man. She does not have the language to understand what is actually being said to her. She cannot name that Vijay has internalized a colonial measuring stick. She cannot name that standard she is being held to, the modern woman that he wanted her to be, and she is not. She just feels like she's not enough. So she goes to Paris on a solo honeymoon, not as an act of resistance, but because she felt lost. She has no framework for understanding what happened to her. even at the end of the movie Queen, when she refuses Vijay because now that she has become a modern woman, he wants her back. She does not fully have the language for why. Why is it happening? She knows something, but it is still more instinct than analysis. Medina built on these concepts, saying that such injustices do not work separately, but are intertwined. When society treats certain groups as lesser, in this case, the woman, it harms their relationship to themselves and the knowledge itself. It creates an oppression of the mind by bringing an air of distrust around their own abilities. If you're treated as inferior for long enough, you start to believe your knowledge is inferior too. Shashi, in the beginning of the movie, is seen reading a Hindi newspaper, but by the end of the movie, she starts reading the English counterpart and learns English to converse with her family. Rani, on the other hand, who is happy in her cultural identity, by the end becomes this modern woman who straightens her hair, wears Western clothing, has a air of confidence that previously the cultural counterpart of her did not possess. Both of them end up becoming a part of the very system that was set out to oppress them, just so they could feel accepted by the people who had also adopted this system into their psyche and now were reproducing it. Finally, bringing back the discussion to an end, the colonial wound is internal. Neither film's antagonist is colonialism, but the colonizer lives in the minds of people through marriage, spaces that they occupy, the language that they speak at the dinner table, and this decolonization that we're talking about, it must happen in personal spaces, such as what made Shashi and Rani feel inferior, and not just in political spaces. If we see that mastering English by the end of the movie gives Shashi power, but also validates the hierarchy that shamed her. In similar manner, Shashi leaving Vijay at the end and becoming more like him and what he wanted her to be as the modern woman also validates the same institution that made her feel culturally bad about who she was. I also see Shashi and Rani as the antithesis of each other. Shashi is what Rani would be if she had married Vijay. So they're basically just a reflection of each other, of what could have been. They both, at the end of the movie, do achieve their happy endings, but through the perspective of Fanon, they both also did lose a part of themselves by trying to learn the language of the colonizers to make sense of the world around them and to fit in. As mentioned before, this movie is an act of resistance towards patriarchy, but it focuses on one aspect too much, forgetting that all three, colonialism, patriarchy, and capitalism, together dominate and not in silos. But my alternative reality for Shashi and Rani is that I don't have an alternative for them. The one major lesson I learned from the module about decolonization is to not push my thinking onto others. It is more about providing the lens and having the tools to identify colonialism at the global, structural, and personal level, and figuring out what is the cause of oppression. So, the decolonial alternative in this narrative is not giving a narrative at all. Instead, using the vocabulary to create our own realities. My main aim was to analyze these movies through the tools I have been provided and unearth the colonialism that persists. So, ending of this video is not a solution. It is an invitation to take the vocabulary and go back to the films that we grew up with, the songs, the stories, the things our families told us about, and look at them through this lens. Question what exactly is colonialism and what is decolonizing, and arriving at our own answers, just like how I did through this project. I was able to understand the movies that I grew up with through a decolonial perspective, and it gives me a lot more perspective about how the world works. Thank you so much.